Hi, I'm Dan Aubuchon, and welcome back to the Joy of Tennis Teaching. Last week I had a great experience. I got a call from a young man who was a friend of Scott Cameron's who wanted to watch the final game of the Celtics. He's also a Celtics fan. And after the game, we started talking about his tennis game. And he's a 25-year-old player, and he's kind of made the decision to give up the dream of competitive play. But he still loves tennis, and he's going to stay in the tennis industry and do some work teaching or whatever. But we started talking about his game, and he asked me if I could do a lesson with him the next morning. So we went out and we did some work, mostly on his serve. And we didn't quite accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. We made some progress, but it didn't go perfectly by any means. And he said, well, do you want to do it again tomorrow? And I love being on court, and especially with a talented player like this. So I went ahead and I said yes. And the next day, I took a little bit different approach. I didn't try to make it the miracle, find the quick fix. And I just stayed the course and let him experience what I was trying to get him to do. And at first, it wasn't working well at all. I don't think he even realized how bad it was going. But then it started to work. And by the end of the lesson, he really had developed the feel for what we were trying to do. And then we skipped a day, and then we did one more lesson, and he brought his dad with him, and we did that lesson a little bit more for the dad, but it was a chance to reinforce what we had learned on day two with this player as well. And I came away, learning some interesting things. A lot of times when we did that group of very experienced pros, I forget who it was, but one of the coaches said, we always learn from our students. I think it might have been Jim. And I learned something that I knew from before, but I relearned it during these 3 lessons with this young man. And that's that, number one, we have the opportunity as tennis teachers to really screw players up. This young man was an extremely natural athlete, and the serve should have been no problem for him at all. And in fact, the biggest problem that he had on his serve was all the crap that he'd been taught over the years. And I'm not blaming any individual one of his teachers, but it was just the accumulation of knowledge confused this player. Like when he started to have a little bit of success doing what I had asked him to do, he says, well, what about the height of the toss, or what about the position of my arm on the follow through, or he was all bottled up with all kinds of technical information. And it made me think about that and how many times this probably happens to talented young players who ended up, because of moving around or just progressing through the ranks, having so many different coaches that they get a lot of different ideas. I don't think it's a coincidence that the top 2 men players right now, Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, both had pretty much the same coach from the time they were very young until the time that they hit it big on the tour. Sinner has changed coaches now to try to get to another level. But both of those players seem to have a very solid concept of what their own personal game is like. And I think that's the lesson that we have to learn, is that the tennis teaching is not about us and what we know. The first day of my lesson with this player, I was kind of showing off all my knowledge about the serve and have them try this gimmick and this gimmick and this gimmick, because a lot of times there'll be a sudden breakthrough like that. But day 2, I did a much better job of listening. Day 2, I really kind of got more into his head about what was going on with his lesson and how he learned. And it reminded me of something I used to tell PBI training professionals. At the beginning of the training program, I'd say, you want to learn the game of tennis on 3 levels. Level number 1, you want to learn these PBI concepts as a player, because the things that you learn as a player, you will do a better job of teaching. There'll be things that you really believe. Doesn't mean you have to be able to perform them at the greatest level in the world, but you have to understand them and you have to see how they apply to your game. And you have to believe in them, because the concepts that you believe in will be the things that you teach the very best. Number 2 is you want to understand the concepts from the standpoint of being a teacher. And by being a teacher, I mean you have to learn to know what to leave out. You don't have to tell every student everything you know about a particular stroke. As a matter of fact, that's the worst thing you can do. What you want to do is tell the student only the things that are important for them to know, that are important for them to understand about their game. And then number 3, you want to learn the concepts of tennis as a teacher of teachers. In other words, that's when you want to really know everything there is about the particular topic that you're learning, something that you could teach other teachers. So it was, I always loved teaching. I always loved getting out on the court, and getting out with this particular student was a great time, and I thank him. I hope he sees this and gets the keeps going with what worked for him. By the end of the week, I think he had a pretty solid concept of how to improve his serve and continue it improving. And most of all, it no longer was hurting his arm. So that's the topic for today, is just that idea of be responsible for your students and really be careful what you teach, because it's going to have long-lasting effects on these students. And take that role of the teacher very seriously, as far as knowing what not to teach, what not to give your student, what parts to leave out because they're not necessary for that particular student's game. Last week I was wearing my Adidas shirt, and I had the Adidas hat, for those of you still playing the hat game. And this hat here has a very interesting story that I'll tell you next week. The beginning of next week starts Wimbledon, my favorite of the majors, and let me know through the comments and your thing who you're picking to win the men's and women's event in Wimbledon. And by next week, we'll hopefully have some comments back. I want to thank everybody for your continued support. We reached the 100 subscriber mark last week, so YouTube congratulated us. We also got some statistics that Reese read to me, and I think it was like 36.8 of our subscribers are based in the US. So that means we're a lot more global than domestic. And I say hello to all my friends around the world who are teaching tennis. I always love hearing from all of you. Please like these videos and subscribe, and most importantly, share them, pass them on. Thanks very much, and go out there and be joyful.